welcome to ETStudios at the ETCIO Conclave. I'm your host Shilpa Ratnam, and joining me in the studio are Chiranjeevi TK, Country Head JAMF India, and Pradeep Khurana, Chief Information Officer and Chief Digital Officer, SBI Card. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
Shilpa.
you.
Thank you
Thank you,
for
Shilpa.
joining us. Now, the topic on hand today is the importance of mobile endpoint security in the modern workplace. Pradeep, I'm sure this is a big concern for you.
Yeah, I think endpoint security has always been a big area, especially for a heavily regulated business like ourselves. We are into the business of a credit card, and inherent to this business model is data security. And it has always been a big area of focus for us. But I think there is almost like a post sort of pandemic era. The pandemic mandated all of us to work remotely. So we were operating our business in a highly remote and a hybrid model for a very long period of time. And I think it just sort of heightened and accelerated some of the transition and innovation in this space. So yes, you're absolutely right, Shilpa. It's a big focus area for us.
Absolutely. I would love to hear your perspective on this,
Yeah, I think
Chiranjeevi.
I'll agree on what Pradeep mentioned, right? Um, COVID, unfortunately, while it's an unfortunate phase, but I think from it brought in a lot of transformation in terms of organizations. Security has always been a key focus for enterprise, for organizations, but it's more so now when you're actually giving the freedom to your users to kind of work anywhere, anytime, on any device, right? So while you're giving that flexibility, it's kind of making sure that, especially with a highly regulated industry where Pradeep belongs to, or even in various across industries as well, compliance is very important, right? And it's critical that while you keep the user experience intact, and making sure the compliance is kind of taken care as well. And I think that's something that JAMF has always strived to kind of really help our customers, and especially on the security side of things in terms of endpoint, be it a laptop, or also in terms of a mobile device as well. Because I think one of the key things that has changed in terms of how we consume the data or consume the information, how we work, right? Most part of our work, pre-COVID, okay, has been predominantly on laptops, and I'm sure Pradeep would agree that a lot of work today kind of happens on a mobile device, and securing those devices becomes that more crucial, and we kind of make sure that that's kind of kept intact in terms of the user experience and securing those.
In working with BFSI, I'm sure two factors are very important. Of course, data privacy, security, and security as an angle, but also staying agile to keep up with all the compliances, right?
Correct, correct. And
Absolutely.
also in terms of a DPDP coming in,
Yes.
right? And I'm probably would want Pradeep's take on in terms of the whole DPDP part of it kind of coming in, where data sensitivity in terms of becomes
And
that more important.
localization is very
Absolutely.
important. Pradeep, how are you handling that? DPDP is something everyone's talking about. Are you reviewing the sort of tech that you're using to make sure it's compliant with it?
Yeah, so see, I'll tell you a little bit about our business
Hmm.
model, and then we can perhaps talk about what are the implications of the DPDP. First and foremost, I think it's a step in the right direction. It's a forward-looking step, and in the long term, while there's always going to be that transition from the way some of the business models operate today versus how they would want to operate when the act is in full implementation. There's always going to be that transition time, but I think it's going to be well worth the effort. As far as our business is concerned, we are a retail business, and one very important thing that you have to note is that while we have 5,000 people who work inside closed doors, they sit in a corporate office working on their laptops or desktops through the day. We have 50,000 people in the field. So for any retail business, the whole concept of the mobile worker is a big factor, right? because you will have your sales people, you will have your distribution people. At times, you will have field support people, field collections people. They are going to be out there in the field. Now, they may or may not be your full-time employees, but they represent your company, they represent your values, they represent your brand to the end customer. And the only piece of tech that you're going to equip them is going to be on mobile, right? So it will be more often than not an app, which is what they would use to access customer data. It could be a sales app using which they would originate a new lead for you, right? And therefore, the security around that whole endpoint, which happens to be a mobile and it's heavily distributed. The number for us is 50,000, right? So those are the number of people out there in the field representing your brand to the customer. And something like a DPDP only sort of heightens the way we look at how we have built security around handling that device. So it is no longer only confined to the app that we expose, because most of the app would meet the security standard. But then, we would want to extend and see how is the device getting secured outside of the app, right? The app security you can do, because that's a program that the enterprise would have written and you can heavily control that. But now with the DPDP coming in, we would have to also look at factors around how do we not only securitize the app, but how do we securitize and guarantee the whole device without, I think my friend out here mentioned, without hampering the end customer experience, right? So that, yeah, so that's going to be the key. And my 2 cents on this is that while there's going to be that implementation and transition curve for all businesses, including ourselves, but in the long term, this is the right move. This is the right step that we are taking. One other factor that I would want to end with on this topic is if you look at the broader environment today, how do you do your KYC? You do it digitally. You're no longer giving a piece of document to an entity. You would either do an Aadhaar or you would do a DigiLocker. When you take a flight, you're using Digi Yatra, right? So there is data that you, as a citizen of the country, the average Indian today is going more and more digital, right? And without you realizing, you're sharing your data, right? And I can look at it from an enterprise standpoint, but if you look at it from the lens of how an average citizen of the country would want to be protected, DPDP gives you an air cover, right? So as an average Indian citizen, where you are expected to do everything digitally, where you are expected to increasingly share your data with a government or a private entity, what protection do you have today in terms of your privacy? Very little. But with the DPDP coming in, there's going to be, if I look at it from a consumer standpoint, it's going to be more guardrails, more safety around your privacy. So it's absolutely a step in the right direction for the enterprise and for the public at large.
Well, now when you put it like that, I definitely feel more secure, with the act coming in. Now, we spoke about how you have 50,000 devices, perhaps, but I kind of want to concentrate on securing the devices of the executives. What is the significance of that and how does one go about that?
Yeah, so like I said, at least the way we look at it is one is definitely on the app layer, right? And I would want to go beyond device security just for the executive. I would say even for the end customer, right? So when as an end customer you download the SBI card app, we'd run a ton of security checks on your phone because we are giving something that would contain your credit card, right? And so we want to make sure. So we would look at any sort of potential vulnerabilities. We would want to look for unsecured data connections and things like that. There are guardrails around that. But especially when it comes to giving the application security to apps that are used by our executives, we would do all of the basic checks. There's going to be very strong app security. When it comes to device security, we would want to make sure that the device is adequately hardened. And the way we harden devices is that, for example, if you were to access the company email, you will only be able to do it inside of a container, right? So I can't take data out of that container, uh, and I can't bring in data back into the container. So our view of running security on the device is two pronged. One, we securitize the app in which you would be able to access data. We also securitize the content by keeping it inside of the container. So, for example, the office email, you will not be able to access locally. It will only be available inside of a container. So, to get to your email, you will first have to invoke the container, and then you can only sort of access the email over there. You can't take content out or content in. Yeah. So,
So multiple layers of
multiple
security.
layers. Both the app and the device. So
All
that's how
right.
we look at it.
Okay. Now I'd love to hear Chiranjeevi shed some light on
Yeah,
this.
I think I think me and Pradeep had a discussion around. I think yesterday we had a chat on that. Um, so I think when you look at executives, right, and we are talking about the the cream of the organization and the nature of information that they would have, right? One is obviously there are different roles that people play in an organization, right? I think there was examples given in terms of like a field force, right? The challenges are very different in terms of let's clicking on a link, the phishing and malwares and things like that, right? Obviously, there's a level of security that you can build in. But when you look at in terms of top executives, let's say hypothetical situation, right? Your results are going to be announced, and you have a board meeting, and you have sensitive information. And today, if you look at any layer, the weakest link actually is your user itself, right? So when you have different layers of security, and again, I'm keeping in mind in terms of, uh, one of the most simple form of security is to block everything, right? And one of the most challenging thing is to kind of really, again, from a user experience part of it, where they have the freedom to kind of really work effectively, giving them the choice in terms of doing whatever they would want, but still making sure you're in this secured, you have that perimeter. So the way we at JAMF look at it, especially the executive part of it, so we have a product called as JAMF Executive Threat Prevention. And this is only for the executives, right? Because the level of threat over there probably is very different. For a growing economy like India, again, the larger vision is that we'll be the third largest economy, or probably 5 trillion probably in the next 2 to 3 years. Uh, there are going to be threats from outside as well. And it's not just in terms of from a government perspective, but also in terms of large conglomerates, organizations, which actually builds the economy, right? So those threats are for real, right? And do we have the necessary tools to kind of make sure, which is there? And unfortunately, there are not many. And I think we're glad to kind of say that, okay, at JAMF, we are committed in terms of, we are market leaders when it comes to mobile security. I think for the last 5 years at various forums, we've been acknowledged that we are leaders in this space. And our Israeli development team has built this particular product in terms of making sure those sophisticated spywares, sometimes where the executives are targeted, right? We're not talking about the normal malwares and phishing. We're talking about sophisticated spywares, which can be specifically built for an individual. Okay, it's going to cost a lot of money to kind of build a tool like that, but you also need a sophisticated tool to kind of block that, right?
It was such a knowledgeable experience listening to you talking about staying ahead in the game and about the tools that you have to offer to do just that. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for watching. And do remember, you can also watch our other episodes of ET Studio at ETCIO Conclave. Thank you.